your children's health is also your responsibility. You see, if you think you can raise healthy children by feeding them junk food, I promise you it can't, it won't, it will not happen. They just get sicker and sicker and sicker. That's why the leading cause of death in children aged 14 years and under, other than accidents, is cancer. Isn't that sad? And so we want to talk about that some more tonight. We want to cover the facts, the fads, the fallacies. I've got some newspaper ads that I want to read to you tonight. I've got some more scripture that I want to cover with you. In fact, right now, let's go ahead and turn to 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. Did everybody bring a sheet of paper and pencil with you tonight? If you think I spoke quickly this morning, I'm going to have to go a lot faster to cover all the things that I promised you tonight. So get ready to take some really quick notes. By the way, this is the first time I've ever done a church service without a tie. John Laria asked me not to wear a tie. He said he wanted to make it look different for TV. And how many of you people know, and everyone knows, when John Laria asks you a question, asks you to request, how many people on staff know that? Just do what John says. And so that's why I'm looking more casual tonight. Now, real quick, 1 Timothy chapter 4. The Spirit clearly says that in latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. Such teachings come through hypocritical liars whose consciences have been seared as with a hot iron. They forbid people to marry, and they order them to abstain from certain foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and who know the truth. For everything God created is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is sacrificed or if it is received with thanksgiving, because it is consecrated by the word of God and prayer. You know, a lot of folks, when they read this verse, they immediately think, hey, that means we can pray over it and eat it. How many of you have heard that taken that way before? I mean, I think we all have. But let's go back to the original Greek. In fact, this was a real stumbling block to me when I first started this, because I knew God's word could not be broken, and I knew it was the same yesterday, today, and forever, and not a jot nor a tittle would be taken away. So people were telling me all the time when I was doing radio talk shows, you know, why does it say this? Well, here's what it says. If you go to foods, it says they forbid people to marry, and they order them to abstain from certain foods. Go to the Greek and look it up. It means broma, B-R-O-M-A. Now, what broma means is foods that have been consecrated or sanctified according to Levitical law. So let's put it in context. They forbid people to marry, and they order them to abstain from foods which have been consecrated and sanctified according to Levitical law. That changes everything, doesn't it? Check it out. Don't trust me on this. Go to your Greek. And then it says it's because it's sanctified or consecrated by the word of God, which is the Torah and prayer. Remember, when Timothy and the books of the New Testament were being written, some of them were many, many years after the ascension of Christ. How many of you are aware of that? And when they referred to the Word of God, the only Word of God they had to refer to wasn't the books of the New Testament, it was the Torah. That's just what it was. And now we have the books of the New Testament, 2/3 of which were written by the Apostle Paul. But I find it fascinating here that this, when you look at it from the Greek concept, basically says, hey, it's consecrated by the Torah and prayer, it's consecrated by the Word, therefore these foods are okay to eat. There are certain people who are in Christian circles who believe that we should be vegetarians. Are you with me? That's what this is addressing, basically. Because there are certain foods which some religions say you shouldn't eat during certain holidays, certain times of the year, etc. That's what this is addressing. Because what Paul is saying here is, hey, if it's consecrated by the Word of God and prayer, if it's broma, food sanctified by Levitical laws, it's okay. Here's one of the big things that happens. How many of you know a lot of folks who go on the mission field, when they come back from the mission field, they can end up with parasites? Now, we're being straight here tonight, okay? I see it over and over and over again in my practice. I mean, a lot of folks who travel to third world countries come back with different types of dysentery and other types of problems because they've picked up a parasite overseas. I've heard people say, you can eat whatever you want to eat, drink whatever you want to drink, and God's going to bless it because of this verse. That's not what it says. And I think that's important that we understand that, because if we continue to think that we can take all the things that God tells us to do and not do what He says, and not suffer the consequences of the damned as far as health and our own bodies, we're dreaming. There's a reason he tells you in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, that if you don't carefully follow the decrees that he's laying out today, all of these diseases are going to come upon you. See, God knew which foods were good, he knew which foods were bad, and that's why he was able to tell us exactly what to do. In Hosea, it says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. But if you read a little bit further on in the verse, it says, because you've rejected my knowledge, I'll now also reject you. And see, I'm really happy that we've had such a good crowd here tonight because I want you folks to know that I'm here to give you as much information as I possibly can. We've got a ton of stuff to give you as far as information, so I want you to take a lot of notes. But I also want to read some articles to you. Remember we talked about alternatives to the use of Ritalin this morning in kids, and I told you I'd cover that? I want to start with that. This is an article out of the USA Today newspaper, and I find it fascinating. It says, Ritalin makers' ties to advocates probed. It's out of one of the local, it's actually out of the USA Today. And what it says basically is that the U.S. uses 85% of the world's supply of methylphenidate or Ritalin. Now, wait a minute. What does it say? We use 85% of the world's supply. Now, this is a Schedule II controlled substance. It's in the same category with morphine, opium, Percodan, and Demerol, and OxyContin. This isn't an M&M. This is serious medicine. This is a serious, serious drug. And that's why a lot of the times at the end of the year, they were running out of Ritalin, and they couldn't prescribe it any longer because the manufacturers couldn't make enough of it because of strict government regulations. So now they've come up with other drugs to give to children. And I find it very saddening that that's happening. Now, let me ask you another question. This morning we talked about reasoning. If the United States is using 85% of the world's supply of Ritalin, and Canada pretty much uses the rest of it, does that mean there are no other children on the face of the planet other than the United States and Canada that suffer from ADD? I'm asking a question. Now, are you following this line of thought? I mean, what's up with us that we've got 7 to 10 million kids taking Schedule II drugs when they're 3 and 4 and 5 years old? Think about that for a second. Here's what we found. 80% of these children, when given a glucose tolerance test, are found to be hypoglycemic. 88% are reactive to red dyes and blue dyes. Many of them have all kinds of food allergies. Now, ladies, listen to me for a second. This is so very important. If you're pregnant, your prenatal nutrition is unbelievably important. You've got to take supplements. You've got to take essential fats. You've got to take folic acid. This isn't a game. You're making a baby inside of you. And that baby requires specific nutrients and specific concentrations if you want a healthy baby. It doesn't matter whether you believe this or not. It's just the way it is. Perfect example. Very dear friend of mine a couple years ago. I won't mention any names on this because the story's pretty bad. She'd had a healthy child. Got pregnant again. And I begged her. I said, please, 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 please get on folic acid immediately. I'm going to. At the 4th month, I told her, are you on prenatals? No, I didn't have time to get any. Are you taking folic acid? No, I didn't. I said, look, don't you know the incidence of spinal bifida is greatly increased if you don't have sufficient quantities of folic acid? The incidence of improper neurological development is greatly increased if you don't have essential nutrients. Well, I know that, but I'm just so busy. How many of you realize I'm so busy is a big excuse of a lot of us? And it's a sad story because the following month, she started having really bad cramps. And she went in for a sonogram and, to check her out an ultrasound, and the baby didn't have a brain and had died. And they had to induce a miscarriage. And she lost the child. And I don't know how many times it takes to tell stories like this before people realize, anybody, even in our audience that are watching on TV tonight, what does it take to realize the importance of prenatal nutrition? She had another baby about a year and a half later. Perfect health. She was on the complete nutrition program, perfect health. Perfect example. Healthy kids need proper prenatal nutrition, plus they also need to be breastfed. I'm telling you. Now, a lot of ladies think, well, that's really inconvenient, that's archaic, that's back in the Stone Age, blah, 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 we don't want to do that. Well, that's God's way. That's how He made us to do this. Now, here's what happens if you don't breastfeed. You give them formula in most cases. But there are natural alternatives, by the way, in Sharon's cookbook if you can't breastfeed, using raw certified goat's milk, which will give you healthy, healthy children. But not with formula. I don't know how to tell you how to raise a healthy child on formula. I don't personally think it can be done. I don't know how to tell you how to raise a healthy child by feeding them solid foods at 3 and 4 months of age, because they all end up with allergies. I don't know how to tell you how it can be done. As far as I'm concerned, it can't be done. You see, there are certain nutrients that our bodies have to have in high enough concentrations to ensure proper development. Formula doesn't have it. It's essential. The essential nutrients simply aren't in it in high enough concentrations. So if you don't give the child enough nutrients, how can the child be healthy? End up with a constant problem with ear infections, runny noses, sinus problem, allergies. It's so easy to correct before it happens, but it's devastating afterwards. Another perfect example. We had some friends who couldn't have children, so they adopted. And it was interesting because I told the lady who was adopting, please, please, please don't give the child formula. Please. So they started the child on the goat's milk. They were unwilling to continue on the goat's milk. They put the child on formula. The child is besieged with allergies now. And I'm telling you, it's the truth. You've got to feed these kids the right foods when they're young to have healthy adults. Otherwise, it simply makes it very difficult to do it. Now, this goes on to tell us basically that methylphenidate is one of the top 10 drugs, this is Ritalin, that is slated for pharmaceutical theft. That it's a drug of choice now in a lot of colleges. And what's amazing to me is that the people who are promoting the Ritalin product are doing the research and paying for the promotion of the Ritalin to different organizations and children's and parents groups. And this article says it's a terrible conflict of interest. Does that make sense? Here's another article out of the U.S. News and World Report. It's called Peppermint Prozac. Now, why are they making peppermint Prozac? For children who can't swallow pills. And they started prescribing this drug to these children knowing that it increased suicidal tendencies. Knowing that. Now you say, well, you can't. I've been telling you this, folks, for years. In fact, 2 years ago, I warned you about this. Let me read you a couple articles here. This is from the Financial Times. Now, I'm going to make a statement here, and I'm not promoting the Financial Times because it has its own set of problems. But these newspapers that we have in the United States are so far to the left, I can't stand them. I mean, try to go find a positive article about Pastor Parsley in a major mainstream. You're not going to find it, chances are. And so I read this thing's actually printed in Britain. It comes on this funny pink paper. And it's amazing. Here's an article here. This is on companies and markets. And it says, the House to probe antidepressants. Now, stick with me for a second. I told you 2 years ago, and I've been telling people for 15 years, that Prozac and these types of drugs, when given to children, cause suicidal behaviors. Here's what's interesting. A House of Representatives subcommittee is planning to hold hearings in the first half of the month to address questions on the potential of antidepressants causing suicidal behavior in children. The move follows allegations in a lawsuit filed last month by New York Attorney General Eliot Spitzer that GlaxoSmithKline, the pharmaceutical group, fraudulently conceals studies showing that its antidepressant Paxil may not work when used to treat children and could lead to suicidal behavior. That the company denied the allegations. The subcommittee will gather information about an internal recommendation made by Food and Drug Administration researcher. It will also study allegations that the FDA senior officials barred, listen to this, the senior officials barred Dr. Andrew Mossholer, an FDA scientist, from releasing his recommendation that antidepressants increase the risk of suicide in children. It also recommends immediate and further regulatory warnings. He also did. Now, here's what's interesting. The FDA's, one of their top scientists said, this product causes suicidal behavior in children. And the FDA's head people said, basically, we're going to override that. And now the FDA, listen to this, the FDA began an investigation aimed at identifying the leak of the Mossholer report. They don't care that it's true. They're hacked off. Somebody leaked it to the press. Are you with me? This is our own Food and Drug Administration. They're the same ones who gave us aspartame. Okay? They're the same ones that gave us all of these drugs, like Vioxx. They're the ones. And so here they are saying, hey, wait, we are mad, and we're going to find out what happened here and who leaked this report to the press, because the public does not have the right to know. You guys, anybody have a problem with that besides me? I mean, you can get me really hacked off with this kind of stuff. And I read this in my newspaper. I didn't see these types of reports in the papers in the United States. Not like this. They had a couple of brief mentions of it. And what's also interesting to me is we've got another major problem in the healthcare industry. How many of you realize that our healthcare costs have gone out of control? Let me see your hands. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, we pay like $1,000 a month in health insurance for the 6 of us. And that's cheap compared to some of the other policies that we've looked at. And there's a $5,000 deductible on my policy. $5,000. Man, my kids are all healthy. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you think, how in the world can it get that expensive? That's why probably half the people in the United States don't even have health insurance anymore. And here's what's interesting. Alternative therapy. U.S. companies search for radical ways to cut the spiraling healthcare costs of employee healthcare, and there are being full-page articles in the Financial Times trying to figure out how to cut the spiraling healthcare costs. Newsflash, teach your employees to eat right. Wait a minute, it can't be that easy. It's that easy. This ain't rocket science. We're not talking to you about biochemical genetics up here tonight. I'm not talking to you about how caffeine inhibits the acetylcholine reabsorption in synaptic clefts. I'm not talking to you about this. I'm just saying, eat right. See, I can talk like that. I was a college professor for 2 years. If you want me to put you to sleep, we do the rest of the seminar like that. It's terrible. I hated to have to listen to these guys in college. And I'd laugh at them. I'd sit in the back and laugh. And when I was in graduate school, I finally got to the point. So some of these professors are they're so caught up in that left-wing stuff, and they would ask me questions on exams. And they were so wrong on their answers. It was so ridiculous. And so I learned how to play the game. So what I would do, and students, you listen to me, if you ever have students and professors that are like this, I would answer the question exactly the way they wanted me to answer it, so I'd get it right. And then I'd put, by the way, I disagree with my own answer. I really did this. I said, this is a bunch of junk. I said, here's the real reason this is happening. This is what's happening, and this is what the causes are. And if you don't like it, it's okay, because I've already given you the answer you wanted to hear. And I get these A's and there'd be smiley faces on my paper, and the guys would slap me on the back when I walk out, and they go, nobody else talks to us like this. I'm like, well, that's because everybody else is scared. They're all scared of that you're not going to get the right grade. But see, I learned that the hard way, because I used to just give them the answer that I wanted to without telling them the right answer, the one they wanted, right? You don't get good grades that way. And here's another interesting thing. I want to read this to you, too. This is interesting. I've got to find you this. Here's another small-page article. This is before the story really hit. FDA warns of suicide risks of antidepressants. Now listen to this. Antidepressants, remember this is the Financial Times talking about companies' well-beings. Antidepressants have become a large growth market for drug makers, with more than $12 billion in sales expected this year. See, they don't care if they kill you. I don't want you to understand that. They really don't care. They cover the reports up. They get mad when someone tells the truth. They want to sell this product. Vioxx is the same thing. These guys knew 6 years ago that it caused stroke and heart attacks. But they were selling billions of dollars of this stuff a year, and they're like, whoa. And there's going to be huge. How many of you have already seen the ads on TV for the lawsuits that have already started? And you know what saddens me? It seems like the only way this junk comes off the market is when people start suing them. Does anybody have a problem with that? I mean, it's just crazy. And, and the sad part about it, you say, well, there's too many lawsuits. Well, that's true. There are too many lawsuits. But it's because of junk like this. And see, it's about time that some of these guys who are just absolute, I'm not going to say it. They're albatrosses, absolute albatrosses. We're forced to make the right decisions for your health and my health. Here's another one. Facing up, see this big I here? Facing up to America's time bomb. Guess who the time bomb is? Financial Times. The baby boomers. You know why? They're saying that once we get into the healthcare system, there's so many of us, we're going to bankrupt it. And that's why they're calling it a time bomb. I find that fascinating. Now we've been, relegated to the realms of the time bomb, all of us baby boomers. And, you think, how in the world could this have happened? Well, it's a 5-letter word. It's called greed. That's all it is. It's just called greed. It's about the money. And I remember a dear friend of mine, Jim Burke, many, many years ago, when I first started my company some 25 years ago, said to me, Ted, he says, you're going to find something out. He says, in most cases, it's about the money in business. And I told him, I said, Jim, I said, you're cynical. He was like my age right now. I'm 49. Jim was. Now your next question is, you're 49, you have all these little babies? I'm glad I'm in good health. But my dad, interestingly enough, was 54 when I was born. This isn't anything new to me. But what was interesting is Jim Burke told me that, and I didn't believe Jim. And now, after I've seen this industry, and I've seen what's happened in this industry, I realize this healthcare industry that Jim was pretty much right. Let me give you another example. 70% of doctors who treat Medicare patients flunked an exam on prescribing to the elderly. This is out of the USA Today, another article. 32,000 hip fractures are attributed to prescribing that leaves the elderly sedated or unbalanced. 37% of people older than 60 are taking 5 or more prescription drugs a day, and 19% take 7 or more. Isn't that amazing? I was speaking to Diana and Mike today at lunch. They were brave enough to take us to lunch. And they were telling me about a friend of theirs who was taking 28 prescription drugs. Now, here's the problem. These things aren't tested combining them like that. Remember the fen-phen debacle we had a few years ago? When you start putting drugs together that weren't tested that way, you have all kinds of side effects they never expected. So here's the point. I don't take any prescription drugs. Now, I take a boatload of vitamins and supplements every day. You say, well, that's a lot of money. Compared to what? Compared to my $5,000 deductible? It's not that much money. And see, and the reality is, I'd rather take a few vitamins and not use them all. Okay, let me explain something to you about the digestive system. When you eat your food, it goes in your mouth, down your throat, into your stomach. Then it's basically chowed up by the body with acid, and it goes into your small intestine. And in your small intestine, there are what we call receptor sites that absorb specific nutrients. And that's why when you have these folks that are going in with these gastrointestinal bypass surgeries, they're eliminating parts of their intestinal tract that absorb specific nutrients. So what's the long-term prognosis going to be? Probably pretty bad. They're probably going to be pretty unhealthy. That's why they tell them you have to take supplements at this point. In addition to that, people say, well, you can take all your vitamins, once or whatever you want to do, but that's not the best way. The best way to do is take vitamins, take them throughout the day. Because if you overload your stomach taking too many vitamins, you don't have enough receptor sites to absorb the nutrients. And so you have to balance all of this out, and we're going to talk about that some tonight. But remember, your body is not necessarily what you eat that makes you what you are. It's what you absorb. And as we get older, our digestive systems lose their efficiency, and they don't absorb as well as they did when we were younger. So we need higher concentrations. How many of you were here this morning when we talked about my mom in the nursing home? My mom's in a nursing home, and they don't even give her vitamins, not even a multiple. Which, the sad part about it is, I looked at the multiple they were giving her, and it's coated in a shellac anyhow, which is like a wax, like a varnish. She can't absorb that. Just wasting, just going through her. And I said to him, can I please bring my mom some good vitamins? And you know what the response was? No, you can't give her drugs without our approval. Back to the drugs again. And you think, these are not drugs, they're nutrients. And see, and that's the problem that we have, is that the American Medical Association and many of their followers take very few classes on nutrition, if any. And so what happens is when you go to your medical doctor, in most cases, not all of them, 10% of them are really good, and in most cases, what ends up happening is you ask them a question on nutrition, they tell you, that doesn't do any good. How many of you had them say that to you? Say, is there a natural cure for this? No. That's what they say to you. But can you explain to me about these studies? Well, what about this? You don't like it, go somewhere else. I've had them talk to me like that. I just laugh and say, you're right, I'm going somewhere else. I mean, it's crazy. And see, and the thing about it is, life has enough challenges. We shouldn't have to worry about getting cancer. Are you with me? We shouldn't have to worry about heart disease. We shouldn't have to worry about high cholesterol. We shouldn't have to worry about this. I've had 20 years of research and working with thousands and thousands of people on a one-on-one basis, individual basis, and we know what works and we know what doesn't work. That's why we put together the reports that we have in our program. In addition to that, I'm going to shoot straight with you. How many of you pretty much realize that I'm a straight shooter? I remember a few years ago, I was having dinner with the former President Bush. There were like 7 of us in a closed dinner down in Miami. And his wife wasn't there at the point. I talked to her about nutrition before. And President Bush started asking me nutrition questions. In fact, his specific question was he asked me if soft-shell crabs are okay to eat. And I told him, absolutely not. And he kind of laughed because why not? And I told him, I said, they're arthropods. You know the story. And so he basically looked at me, kind of shook his head. He goes, whoa, I really like soft-shell crabs. So you have my word. Even if the President of the United States asks me a question, I'm going to tell him the way it is. So any of you ask me questions, I'll tell you the way it is. Now, you may not like the way that it is, but the reality is, you can't take the Word of God, you can't take the scientific research that's been done and completely throw it against the rocks and not expect to be crushed by it. It doesn't work that way. And I always like the folks, I'll eat what I want to eat and I'll do what I want to do, and if I die, I die. You know my response is to them? Die. What do you want me to say? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, what do you want me to say? I mean, how do you respond to something like that? I used to go out to seminars. I remember one time I was in Dallas. I was at the Reunion Arena. We had, I think, 26,000 people at one of our seminars. I was there with President Bush and Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell and all those guys. And it was, it was kind of interesting. They used to ask me to go out to my tape table and talk to the folks that were at the seminar. So one day I was at the tape table and I was talking and answering questions, and some lady comes up with me with a diet soda and sticks it in my face. I'll drink it. I don't care what you say. What did I say to her? Drink it. I don't care. If it's so unimportant to you, your health, why do you think your health means anything to me? Isn't that terrible? I think I've become jaded, Sharon. I don't know. And I'm not trying to be mean, but see, there's too many other people that say, hey, can you tell me more? Can you tell me more? I want to know more information. Can you help me? It's like Diana. Last year, I know, she came in, 2 years ago now, she came up to me, Diana, come up here. She came up to me and she said that she had a real bad problem. She'd been diagnosed with Graves' disease. And Diana basically, she said, well, can you fix that? It's a thyroid condition. And I said, that's pretty easy to fix. She goes, that's not what I was told. That's right. They told me I had to go in for immediate surgery, right? Like, how many days did they give you?
3 days.
3 days. They went in surgery in 3 days. And I said, let's try something different. So we tried something different. How long did it take you to have huge results?
Oh, within 6 weeks.
And then it was interesting. Then I came back to the church. A few months later, she was doing absolutely wonderful when I left, and she got off my program. And the Graves' disease did what?
The levels started going back up. Started getting 6.
And so then you went back on the program, and now you're perfect.
For 4 months,
totally
my levels are perfect.
Thank you. Give her an applause. You see, it doesn't have to be hard. It's easy. And you don't have to eat broccoli nut surprise every night. Lord have mercy. People think we eat really bad tasting food. I mean, every single recipe in Sharon's Maximum Energy cookbook has been taste tested by yours truly. And I promise you, some of the recipes got kicked out. The recipes in there are good. I know Diana told me last Thanksgiving, they fixed an entire Thanksgiving meal out of Sharon's cookbook and didn't tell the people that were coming for the meal that it was healthy food, and they all thought it was wonderful and tasted great. You see, that's the thing. It's like Austin. We have a place that we go. We buy a motor home over in Central Florida, and they've got a place called the Crown Club at Lazy Days, and they give us lunch whenever we want lunch. They have a really good restaurant there. It's free. It's a few minutes from the house, and so about twice a week we take him over there, and he's always ordering like a cheeseburger. You're all looking at me like, he's eating a cheeseburger? Doesn't the Bible say you shouldn't mix meat with milk? Am I right? Yeah, I think some of you already thought that. The Bible doesn't say that. I'm sitting on a cruise ship a couple years ago, and there's a Jewish fellow sitting beside me. And he asked me what I did, and I told him that I taught dietary principles out of the Torah, the Old Testament. And he goes, oh, that's interesting. I said, let me ask you a question. Why do you guys tell us not to eat dairy with beef? Oh, because the Bible says not to do that. I said, it doesn't say that. I said, I've read the entire Bible, which you probably haven't. And he goes, And I told him. And he goes, well, they teach us, our rabbis teach us. I said, here's what it says. It says, don't cook a goat in its mother's milk. Oh, well, that means, no, I said, no, that's not what it means. What it means is you don't cook a goat in its mother's milk. That's what it means. And that's because that was a ritual they did with heathen sacrifice. That's all that means. Well, but our scholars, I don't care about your scholars. I don't care about all that. Remember, Jesus choked on that stuff. He hated that stuff. They said, you take the word of God and you nullify it because of your traditions. Remember what I'm saying? So if you want to eat a cheeseburger once in a while, have a cheeseburger. I don't care. How do you know? He's 16 years old. He's in college. What's he going to do when his friends need to go out? First of all, he's already in college and he's 16. Okay? So now he's going to say, I don't eat that? No. Just you don't have to be that strict. We've been strict on him his whole life, and now he's getting to the point because he's so concerned because he's got a full six-pack, abs, not beer. I better qualify that statement. That he doesn't want to lose his six-pack, and so now he's doing like me. Every once in a while I'll eat a hamburger patty with a little bit of cheese on it, and I just don't get the bread and have a salad with it. Because I don't like eating high glycemic foods, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because it makes me gain weight. I don't like gaining weight. How many of you can honestly say that when you get past the age of 40, it's easier to gain weight than it is to lose weight? And I just don't like doing that, and so I've lost about 8 pounds since I've seen you guys last, and I've got about 8 more to go, and I just want to be as healthy as I possibly can, because the reality is, I know now with these little kids running around, it's my responsibility to keep me healthy to be here for them. You know, it's pretty selfish when a parent allows themselves to get sick because of how they eat when they have the young children. It's pretty selfish. Now, I don't hear you shouting me down out there, but it's the truth. See, I could talk to you like this. See, this morning, they kind of snuck me in because Pastor Parsley wasn't here. You all knew I was going to be here tonight. So I can talk to you any way I want to talk to you. You came here to hear what I had to say. I was treading on some fine glass up here this morning not to try to hack a bunch of people off. I probably did that anyhow. But the reality is we're here tonight because you want to be here tonight and you want to learn this stuff, and we're not here to play games with you. So don't get to a point where your life and your family's life becomes miserable because you don't want to feed them what they want. Now, you can find healthy alternatives how to prepare what they want, which is what we do. And that way they can eat the foods that they like most of the time. Like last night, we're at one of the Trader Joe's or one of the other markets, and I was over there with Tim, and I got some cookies for the kids. Well, we put those cookies in Harrison's lunchbox when he goes to school, because he's in a private Christian school, because they keep giving all the kids these junk cookies. I don't want him eating the junk cookies. So we give him organic, healthy cookies without canola oil and without hydrogenated oil. Because we don't want him to feel as though, there's something, wrong, that he can't eat this kind of stuff. Now, Harrison's interesting. This is funny. Harrison, he's an amazing, he's like Austin. They're so amazing when they're young like this, come up with these crazy things. Today, he told the 2 ladies from the church, this is funny. He goes, I don't want to go into Sunday school this morning. Well, why don't you want to go to Sunday school? I want to stay with you 2 beautiful ladies. I don't know. Well, he hears me tell my wife how beautiful she is all the time, so that's what he says. And he goes, and my mom is so beautiful that every time I see her, I burp. He's a riot. And it's just, I could tell you stories about Austin. He's asked me not to do that when he's in the room, so I won't do that. But I find it fascinating that Harrison has all of these little things that he does already. He's 5 years old, and yesterday, or the other day before he came up to me, he brought me a bag of cookies. He says, Daddy, can I have these? I need to know if they have hydrogenated oil in them. I said, yes, you can have them, Harrison, but only one. Okay, you're going to get a free report on cancer when we leave tonight. We're going to do the facts of fads of fallacies. Before I do anything right now, I'm going to tell you how I got Pastor Parsley's cholesterol down. That's number 1. High cholesterol. Here's what you have to do. You have to limit your intake of animal products to no more than 3 times a week, initially, to bring the cholesterol levels down. That means no beef, cheese, chicken, fish, nothing. No animal products. 3 times a week, you can have them. That's it. Okay? Now, no dairy at all, period. Done. Dairy's gone. No skim milk, no whole milk, nothing. There's no dairy products at all. Now, now remember, Pastor Parsley, his cholesterol was over 500. I told you what I told him to do. If your cholesterol's not that high, you may not have to go to this extreme. Next, half your body weight in fluid ounces in water every single day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, 100 ounces of water. Make sure the water does not have chlorine or fluoride in it. Make sure it's purified. Vitamin E every single day. Here's what's interesting. How many of you saw that big flurry of stuff we talked about this morning about vitamin E is bad for you, more than 200 IUs a day? I've got one thing to say about that. Hogwash. That's ridiculous. And here's why. They don't quantify the studies that they used. And most of those studies, they don't even use natural vitamin E. They use a synthetic vitamin E made out of gasoline. And so you don't have any way of knowing what was gasoline vitamin E, natural vitamin E, or anything else. I've never seen toxicity effects with vitamin E. Now, Pastor Parsley's a big guy, so I told him 1,600 IUs a day. Most people don't need more than 400 to 800 IUs a day. Plus, vitamin E is a natural blood thinner. It helps to make the blood flow more efficiently. See, when you eat a lot of high-protein meals, you have what's called undigested urea, or the protein levels in your blood get too high. Your blood turns into like blood sludge, artery glue. It's kind of like if I had a big glass of honey right here and I tried to pour it out and the honey was cold. It's not going to go out, is it? Okay? Whereas if I take a glass of water and I pour it out, it's going to run freely. Your blood's supposed to be like water, not like honey. And see, when your blood gets real thick because you're eating too much protein or you're not drinking enough water, and the blood's primarily water, your heart has to pound to push it through the arteries. Now, I know this sounds really simple, doesn't it? But no one's ever told you this. So people think, oh, I don't want to drink water. Or now I love the way, now they put you on diuretics. That's crazy. See, and they say, limit your sodium, we're putting you on diuretics. It's not a sodium problem in most cases, it's not enough potassium. Now, in some cases, you eat too much sodium, too much salt, and you've got to cut back on that, and increase the foods that contain large amounts of potassium, like bananas. Drink more water, and guess what? The blood pressure comes down, the cholesterol comes down, you feel healthy, you look healthy, you're not going to die of a heart attack or stroke. You're going to really reduce your risks. In addition to that, vitamin C every single day. B complex every single day. Stay off the top 10 foods never to eat. We covered this morning. Cod liver oil every day. Boy, Pastor didn't like that one. He said to me, "Do you have it in capsules? You know, do you have it in capsules?" I love his voice. I said, "Yeah, but they don't work. You got to take too many of them. Need a couple tablespoons a day." "Oh, that stuff's bad." I said, "Yeah, I know. I take it every day." Guess who also takes it every day? Harrison, Savannah, me, Sharon. Now, it's a good blood thinner, and it will thin the blood. If I give it too much to Alexis, she gets nosebleeds. Isn't that interesting? She doesn't need as much. So she gets like a teaspoon once a week. It's a good. Now, if you're taking existing blood thinners, talk to your medical doctor who knows about nutrition and find out if you can go to cod liver oil and vitamin E as a natural form of blood thinning without having to take the drugs. Now, the drugs they give you for blood thinning, they're called Coumadin, most of them. You know what they use that in? Rat poison. Think that has any other side effects? Unbelievable. It's just amazing. Also, exercise, and you need to stay away from bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes because of their glycemic index. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And basically, there's a product called polysaccharol. It's a very good product. It's a sugarcane derivative, and it helps to lower cholesterol naturally, 20 milligrams a day, polysaccharol. That's it. That was the paragraph email Pastor Parsley got. Isn't that amazing? Can it be that easy? 3, 5 doctors? How many doctors was it? 3 or 5 told me he couldn't. He had to take drugs. You don't have to take drugs in 99% of the cases. And the only time you really have to take the drugs is if you won't listen and you won't change your diet. See, that's the frustrating part that the medical professionals do have, trying to get you to change your diet, because it's not easy. You know, that's why we try to nudge people around. And pretty soon they start eating like we eat and they start feeling great. How about the eggs and cholesterol thing? You heard that? You know why they tell you that eggs raise your cholesterol? This is funny. These studies that they use to prove that were done about 50 years ago. And guess who did the studies? The cereal manufacturers. Now, guess why they did the studies? Because they want you eating cereal for breakfast instead of eggs. And when they did the study, they used dried egg yolk powder, not whole eggs. Dried egg yolk powder is a form of oxidized cholesterol. It is murder on your arteries. So they've come up with these bogus studies again telling you how bad these things are. I mean, Austin's gone to camp so many times, and they always feed him this egg powder. And I tell him, I said, don't eat that. Make him crack the real eggs. And the way you do that, if you go into a restaurant, don't ever eat the scrambled eggs. Because 95% of the time, they aren't real eggs. They're powder eggs. Don't eat those. Say, I want my eggs over easy or over medium. Well, guess what? They have to crack an egg. And the reality is a lot of eggs basically aren't as healthy as they need to be that you get in restaurants anyhow, simply because they contain a lot of hormones. And a lot of chickens are given a lot of hormones to try to get them to produce larger and larger and more eggs. I know Diana was telling me a story this morning about these chickens, these turkeys they were trying to raise, and they were trying to get the breast meat to get bigger. So they pumped them full of hormones until their breasts got so big that their legs broke. My wife called that the Dolly Parton syndrome. Cut that off TV. But I mean, there's a point where this, a few years ago, it was interesting. I was watching 2020 with Geraldo Rivera. This is actually about 10 or 15 years ago now. And they had gone down to Puerto Rico. And they had little 2-year-old boys and girls that had grown the breasts of full-grown women. And they said, what happened to these kids? Well, they traced it back to the food supply, and they were pumping that female growth hormone, again, hormone that we talked about this morning, diethylstilbestrol, into the food supply in such high concentrations that it was being retained in the fatty tissue of the food. These kids were eating this and getting all this estrogen. Now, there's another thing I want to tell you. This thing with soy products has gotten out of hand. That's what they make tofu out of. And I've got good news for you. There's not one tofu recipe in our cookbook. I hate tofu. Last night we had Harrison. We got him one of those little entrees because we're in the motor coach and we couldn't cook a full meal. And he's picking through his meal and he goes, Dad, I don't like this stuff. And I said, eat it. About 10 minutes later, I walk over there. He goes, Dad, I really don't like this stuff. I looked down, it was tofu. I said, Harrison, I don't like that stuff either. He smiled real big as I threw it in the garbage can. I didn't even realize it was in there. And the reality is, tofu is a soybean derivative. Feed the soybean to the hogs and let them eat that stuff. Let the world have that. We don't need to eat that stuff. It's loaded with female hormones, okay, the phytoestrogens. I've seen men who start using soy products after they go through their male menopause who also develop breasts. It's called gynecomastia. It's a condition. It's called gynecomastia. So men, let me ask you a question. Let's get real here. How many of you can honestly say when you get in your 40s, you don't want breasts? Let me see your hands. I mean, this isn't rocket science. So stay away from soy. Now, a little bit of soy here and there in a few foods, it's no big deal. But man, people are living on these soybean. In fact, it's so funny. A few years ago, we were going to a church. And we were going to a church, which we do all the time. And the pastor had come to me and had got on my nutrition program and had lost like 30 pounds and basically was doing great. Well, then they started learning about nutrition from other sources. Now, how many of you can say to me, when you start reading a lot of this nutrition stuff, it gets confusing? But my stuff's not confusing. It's just simple, and I don't change. And he said to me, he goes, we've decided we're going to become vegetarians. And I said, okay. He goes, we think it's the healthier way. We're going to start eating a lot of soy products. And I told him, you ought to know where the story's going. And I told him, I said, soy will make you fat because of the estrogen. It'll give you, And he goes, no, it won't. We've read the articles. We know more about this. And I said, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. That's what I said to him. I said, you do what you want to do. And so we stopped going to that church several years ago, and I saw him the other day over at Epcot, which is a Disney place down in Orlando. And he's huge. He's gained 60 pounds. And guess what? And yes, he does. And I didn't want to say anything to him. What am I going to say to him? I told you that was going to happen. He already knows they're there. His head's the size of a pumpkin. He's gained so much weight. And, a lot of times when you eat those hot, and they go, I love bread. Well, yeah, I love bread too. My head gets as big as a pumpkin when I eat bread. I swell up. I gain weight like crazy when I eat bread. But see, all you can do is tell them. I hope we edit this. This has got to be edited. Okay. All right. Facts, fads, and here we go. Is rheumatoid arthritis a permanent condition? Absolutely not. We talked about that this morning. Avoid the nightshade variety of foods. Don't eat eggplant, bell peppers, potatoes, and tomatoes. They inflame the joints of rheumatoid arthritis. Take cod liver oil every single day. I've seen people completely eliminate rheumatoid arthritis in 2 weeks who have been taking drugs for rheumatoid arthritis. Is pork safe to eat if it's well cooked? Is it safe to eat? Are you going to drop dead if you eat it? No. If that's how you want to classify safety. Okay. Is it safe to eat? Not according to God's word. He tells you don't do it. I know that it's loaded with methionine. Methionine converts to homocysteine. Homocysteine is what plaques the arteries, and most people have problems with cholesterol and atherosclerotic plaquing. Do I eat pork? Absolutely not. Do I ask if pork's in a product before I eat it? Absolutely. I mean, we were at the restaurant today, you know, we went to a safe place, and it was still an interesting experience. You know, I ordered a steak. Yeah, a steak. Now, you all looked at me like, you ate a steak? I already told you, it's okay. Now, I don't eat a steak very often. I don't feel good if I eat a lot of meat like that. But I have it a steak. It's not a big issue. You know, that's what always cracks me up with these vegetarians. You know, the vegetarians, you know, and if you're a vegetarian, don't get mad at me, okay? I'm not picking on you. You guys are a sickly lot. You look terrible. You got circles under your eyes, half of you, you're gone. You go in the gym, you can't pick anything up. You have a much higher incidence of leukemia. I mean, it's the truth. They got to take B vitamins and B12 because they don't get it in the food they're eating. I mean, that's just not normal, okay? And let me tell you why I know this. When we first got married many years ago, we decided, we'd read a lot of literature. This is why I tried to warn the pastor. Well, you know, too much meat's not good, which is true, it's not. So we decided to try vegetarianism. I dropped down to 158 pounds. I was weak as a kitten. I looked terrible. I had circles under my eyes. People thought I was dying. I got letters every time I went on TV. You're supposed to be so healthy. Look, you're about 2/3 dead. What's wrong with you? You know, you're not supposed to look like that when you promote health and nutrition. And it was pitiful. I mean, I felt pitiful. I looked pitiful. I was weak. I was embarrassed in the gym. And finally, I was in Cancun, Mexico at a Christian businessmen's convention. And it was interesting. I got on a Nautilus machine, and I used to do like 30 reps with 200 pounds on the bench press. I couldn't bench it one time. And I said, I have had enough. In German, the word is genug. I am genugt with this. And now I feel great. Now, we don't eat a lot of meat. We don't eat a lot of chicken. And I try never to eat chickens in restaurants because of the hormones. I don't know if it was one of those that had its legs broken because of all the hormones. Low fat, no fat, which is the best? You really need about 30%, 15 to 30% of your calories in fat. I take a fat supplement every single day because I don't think I get enough essential fats in my diet. I take cod liver oil, and I also take another product called conjugated linoleic acid. It helps to burn fat and melt cellulite. See, now nobody looked down to write anything down until I said cellulite. So don't go on a no-fat diet. Remember the no-fat diet craze that went through a few years ago? Everybody got sick, looked like they were going to die. Everybody gained more and more weight. This is not healthy. We'll talk about that in the 5 ways to burn body fat in a few minutes. Butter versus margarine versus smart balance. You have these spreads that are called smart balance now. Other spreads that are called, I can't believe it's not butter. Okay? Well, some of these products have hydrogenated oil in them, so I think they need to be renamed. I can't believe I'm dying of heart disease and cancer. Use natural butter. Stay away from these hydrogenated fats. Next, number 7. Is salmon good for you? Not necessarily. Don't eat farm-raised salmon. It's the pits for you. It is one of the most sickly fish. They got to pump it full of antibiotics. It turns gray. It's so unhealthy. It's not pink. They got to dye it to make it look pink. Oh, come on, guys. Go to Sam's, okay? Or any place. I'm not going to promote Sam's. Delete, cut. Go any place you want to go and look at the salmon that's not wild salmon. It will have right on there, coloring added. They have to color it pink. It ain't pink. It's gray. And you know, you don't need it because it doesn't have the essential fats, plus it's loaded with antibiotics. It's really sickly. Don't eat farm-raised salmon. How many of you have seen the reports coming out in papers all over the country about this? Use the wild salmon. It's a little bit pricier, but if you don't eat it a lot, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Is shellfish good for you? You already know the answer for that. No, it's not, in case you don't know the answer for that. Is washing your hands on a regular basis throughout the day necessary for good health? Yes. It's simple. Today I was in the bathroom with I'm not going to mention who I was in the bathroom with. That just sounds weird, okay? I was in the bathroom with one of your staff members, and we had to go to the bathroom before we had lunch because you always wash your hands before you eat. And everybody's washing their hands. I'm washing my hands. And then as we're leaving, I picked up a paper towel, and I walked over to the handle, and I said, always use a towel. And I figure if I drop enough towels by the door, someday someone will get a hint to put a garbage can there. Now, here's why. 80% of the people who use the bathroom don't wash their hands. So here you are scrubbing down, and you walk over, and you grab all that E. coli right there. And now you're all contaminated again. Now, E. coli is a fancy word for feces, which is a fancy word for poop, okay? Here's the point you understand what I'm saying? So now you're going out and you're eating with your hands that you just grabbed the handle with, that you washed, that you thought are clean. The same thing. Don't turn the water off with your hand after it's clean. Guess who had just used it? The people whose hands were dirty. Use a towel. You say, well, that sounds extreme. Hey, hepatitis is extreme. And that's what's transmitted, and all kinds of other diseases. Plus, when you get a cold, it's a rhinovirus. Because your hands get somebody's germs on them. You touch your nose, touch your eyes. It's transmitted. Avoid that. Keep the kids healthy. Even Harrison, my 5-year-old, Dad, get the towel, open the door. It's amazing. But see, it doesn't have to be hard. Next, aluminum cookware and Alzheimer's disease. Is there a correlation? Last night, we were in that storm, those hurricanes. 3 of the storms went over us. And it was interesting down in Florida with hurricanes. It's an amazing experience, one I hope I never have to see again, especially all 3 of them in 6 weeks. And at the end of the 3rd one, we had an 18-inch stream of water going through our backyard, 18 inches deep, going to the lake. I thought, wow, that's a lot of water. As it flooded out 2 of my buildings, I thought that was nice. And, it was interesting. And so my nanny went to the motor coach and was cooking out there because we've got the motor home, and so we've got the utensils out there to cook with because it's gas. And she took the frying pan out of the motor home, which is stainless steel. So last night we get here and we went to one of the health food stores. We got a couple of burritos, and we want to cook them up. And they've got a little tiny pot about that big around. You can't even put it, you have to kind of bend the burrito, and it's only left in the motor home. So I ask your staff, do you have any stainless steel cooking pots or glass? And sure enough, you do. So I borrowed a couple of them. Don't use aluminum. Here's why. Ladies, have you ever noticed that when you use aluminum over a period of years, it pits? Doesn't it? Guess where the aluminum's going? In your food. Guess where it goes once it gets in your digestive tract? To your brain. The University of Toronto did an excellent study several years ago, and I believe they proved conclusively that exposure to aluminum in high enough concentrations is invariably linked to Alzheimer's disease and other forms of senile dementia. Don't use aluminum pots and pans. Don't use aluminum chlorhydrate antiperspirant deodorants. Don't use the stuff that has aluminum in it. Don't put it on your skin. Do this. Go home. Take a clove of garlic and cut it in half and rub it on the bottom of your foot. You'll taste it in your mouth in 30 minutes. Your skin's a giant, semi-permeable, porous membrane. It absorbs stuff. Same thing. Don't use shampoos that contain sodium lauryl sulfate. And ladies, never use talcum powder. It's been proven to cause ovarian cancer. The other day I'm getting my hair cut. The lady's got a big, huge thing of talc. She throws it on me. I said, what are you doing? Well, I use this for all of my people. And I said, not me, not my wife. She goes, why not? I said, it causes ovarian cancer. I said, get some powder that doesn't have talc in it. She goes, I didn't know that. And I said, I know. You wouldn't be using it. And see, people don't realize. See, the war, remember Richard Nixon 35 years ago said, we're declaring war on cancer. Remember him? For those of you young folks, you don't remember Nixon. He was an interesting character. We'll have cancer wiped out in the next 5-10 years. We'll be done. Hundreds of billions of dollars have gone into cancer research. Guess how close they are now to finding a, quote, cure for cancer? They're no closer than they were 35 years ago. There's some sad news for you, but let me tell you some other news. You know there have been a lot of natural therapies that are very effective in the treatment of cancer that you can't use in this country legally? Isn't that interesting? And do you know why? Because cancer is a major industry. If you suddenly cured cancer with a product that didn't cost anything, you know how many people would be out of work? Now, I'm picking on a few doctors who do this, not the ones who don't do this, because some of them aren't like this. Doctors have overheads in their business and their practices. They have to do so many surgeries a month in order to pay their bills. Now, whether you want to believe that or not, that's the truth. In fact, I was watching a TV show, I believe it was 2020 or one of those other shows just a few months ago, and some doctor from a major medical clinic had done thousands of cardiac bypass surgeries that weren't needed. You guys saw the show, didn't you? And when they were interviewing him, he was in this huge lawsuit. He basically said, I was under pressure to do so many surgeries a month. Diane told the doctor, 3 days, I've got to have surgery, or I'm going to, die? I'm not dead. Can I try a natural approach? She went to another doctor. He says, yeah, try another approach. Try a natural approach. Perfect. No drugs, no surgery. Drugs have side effects. Okay, real quick. Thyroid problems, as we're talking about Diane. The biggest problem with thyroid in this country right now is the use of chlorine and fluoride in the water supply. They compete with the mineral iodine for the absorption in the thyroid gland, and they cause the thyroid to become disruptive. Don't use fluoride or chlorine in your water, because here's what also happens. When you affect thyroid gland function, which is a master gland, you inhibit the body's ability to absorb and to utilize B-complex vitamins. B6, B12, and folic acid have been shown repeatedly to reduce the risks of heart disease because, remember, we talked about homocysteine earlier? Methionine is converted into homocysteine. Homocysteine plaques the arteries. If you have methionine converted to homocysteine, you have B6, B12, and folic acid available. It converts back to methionine and is excreted to the kidneys out of the body. So you don't get heart disease. And so the reality is this whole cholesterol theory is not really based in good science. The homocysteine theory is much more effective and explains a lot more. But if you don't have thyroids that are functioning properly, then it causes an increase of heart disease. They saw this just so perfectly shown in Vietnam, where the young soldiers were giving chlorine tabs to drink the water in Vietnam. And a bunch of them came home with advanced atherosclerotic plaquing in their arteries because of what was going on with their thyroids. And you see it also with these young children that are 17, 18, 19, 20 years old that have heart attacks while doing athletic events. You see it on TV every single year. Somebody else dies, a young child dies. And so much of it's because of the water that we drink. So always make sure you drink bottled water as much as you possibly can and avoid your exposure to the chlorine and fluoride. Next, chocolate is the new miracle cure. Fact, fad, or fallacy? Fallacy. Now, ladies and chocolate. I don't know what's going on with all that. That's just amazing to me, how women love chocolate. But you know what some theorists say that is caused by? See, ladies during certain times of the month have lowered serotonin levels. And so when you eat chocolate, it actually elevates your serotonin levels, makes you feel better. And so what they're doing is they're constantly craving chocolate. I know if I drink chocolate or eat chocolate more than a few days, I get real dark circles under my eyes. Now, ladies, a lot of you are using a lot of makeup to cover up those dark circles. I can't do that. And the reason for that is chocolate in high dosages is very toxic to your kidneys. And yet a lot of people have a lot of allergies to chocolate, and it causes a lot of the circles. I had a lady call me just the other day. She's having a really bad problem with constipation. I can mention that tonight. We're not in Sunday morning church. I was so careful not to mention that word this morning. And she's in her mid-20s, and she's got all these health problems. And she's the daughter of an internationally known evangelist. If I told you his name, you know who he is. And she had been told she had to go undergo all of these surgeries and all these things that had to be done. And her dad knows me and said, before you do anything, you're calling Dr. Ted. We're not signing for this. You're 25 years old. This is crazy. So the first thing I asked her is, how much chocolate do you eat? A lot. You have dark circles under your eyes? How'd you know that? See, chocolate's not healthy. I hate to tell you that. It's not. If you do it every once in a while, it's okay, but it's like coffee. Don't do it on a regular basis. Next thing, low salt for blood pressure. We've already talked about that. Not necessary in most cases. Increase potassium. Eat more bananas, avocados, figs. Vitamin E, good or bad. We've already discussed that. Asthma. Is it inevitable for children? No. Asthma is so easy to fix in most cases. You say, easy? How come I wasn't told it was easy? Sean Scarborough came to me a few months ago. Sean's a very dear friend. And he had a younger brother who basically had a daughter who'd been diagnosed with asthma who was like 8 months old. And he said, can you help correct this? And I said, I don't know. Is your brother's wife breastfeeding? He goes, absolutely. And I said, easy to fix. He goes, no way. Baby's on a ventilator at night. Ventilator, mask, ventilator, 8-month-old. And he goes, we can't take it anymore. This is horrible. And he said, can you help her? I said, let's see what we can do. Comes in the office, put the mother on a supplement program. B6, B12, B-complex, flaxseed oil, cod liver oil, multiple vitamin C. And she goes, will this help? I said, no, it won't help. She goes, what do you mean? I said, you'll get rid of it. She goes, no way. I said, okay, see what happens. Try it for 30 days. If it doesn't work, just send it all back to me. I'll give you your money back. It doesn't matter. If you want, I'll give it to you anyhow. 30 days later, they call me up. It's gone. No more ventilator. And they said, it was that easy? Remember when Pastor Parsley asked me about his cholesterol? I said, Pastor Parsley, ask me something hard. That's easy. There are some things that are just easy that really respond quickly to nutrition. Next one, an aspirin a day. How many of you have heard that? Aspirin, if you want to see a blood thinner, boy, that's aspirin. How many know before you go in for surgery, they tell you don't take aspirin? I personally believe, and I believe the research proves it, that when you take aspirin on a regular basis, you increase your risks of macular degeneration, causes the eyes to bleed from the backside, detaches the retina. Not necessary. You know, aspirin would not even be approved currently if aspirin had never been put on the market. You couldn't get it through FDA. No way. Too many side effects. Too many people die from it. Same thing with acetaminophen, Tylenol products. Those products can never make it again. You know, the liver damage and problems that some of these products cause are unbelievable. But, you know, we take this stuff on an ongoing basis. People take handfuls of pills. You tell them to take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 vitamins. They think, that's too many. But they're taking 28 prescriptions. Are you with me? I mean, you can't look at vitamins as drugs. It's very important that you understand that. Vitamins are nutrients, and you have to have high enough concentrations of the nutrients. Is memory loss inevitable? A little bit, but not always, no. And we already covered this, are eggs bad for you? Now let's talk about a few other things. I've had a couple people ask me about prostate problems. And I've had them ask me about natural alternatives to the use of Viagra. And I've had them ask me, if you have bad genetics, are you basically doomed? Let's start with the genetics. Let's say your father had heart disease, your grandfather had heart disease, everybody died of heart disease. Are you going to have heart disease? No, not necessarily. 80% of what happens to you is not based on genetics, it's based upon your lifestyle choices. You don't have to sign that bill if you don't want to. If somebody brings you in a big basket of snakes to your front door, real live snakes that are all pit vipers, that are all poisonous, and they open the lid and they say, sign for this basket of snakes, we want to put them in your house, are you going to sign for the snakes? You don't have to sign for these diseases. There are all kinds of natural alternatives that you can do that basically eliminate a lot of these different types of conditions. Diabetes, I want to talk about that very quickly. If you have a problem with adult onset diabetes, it's very important to eliminate high glycemic foods out of your diet. No bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes. No fruit juice, no dried fruits. Drink the water, then follow everything else that I told you to do for Pastor Parsley's high cholesterol program. Stay away from junk foods. Stay away from sodas, all types of soda. Very easy to control diabetes that way.